This segment is from the PianoInspires podcast, Season 2, Episode 7, featuring Pete Jutras with guest Jennifer Snow.
And what were some of the experiences you had at SMU, especially with Sam and his mentorship, that brought you into sort of really expanding yourself beyond, I'm a pianist, now I'm thinking about piano pedagogy? Is that where you started developing interests in research and potentially pursuing higher education? Or is that where your mind started moving in that direction? What were some of the things you worked on with him
Yeah.
or were exposed to through him?
So there was a lot. I mean, obviously there was brilliant pedagogy and just so much to soak up there. But one of the things that was so great about that program was we had to teach a lot. Like, we were given a lot of students and a lot of hours, private lessons, group classes, and just kind of thrown right into the deep end. But, all of a sudden I had, 12 or 14 students and 3 group classes to manage and 2 collegiate class piano things to teach during the day. All the planning, and we were made to do meticulous planning for everything, which is great. It seemed like a ton of work at the time. We didn't sleep. But that really helped me cut my teeth pedagogically, because I had students of all levels and advanced students, beginning students that had challenges that had to be figured out and worked around and things like that. So that was very formative. When I talk about how I got into teaching adults, if I'm really honest, that was just one of those things that happened. So in the midst of all this, you're trying to make ends meet, and that's not always easy as a graduate student. So I remember very distinctly, one of the teachers in SMU piano prep department asking me if I taught adult students. I'd never taught an adult student in my life, but fortunately, the back of my brain, that inner voice said, "Well,
say yes.
You need students, so yep, say sure, I'll teach an adult student." And I took my first adult student and actually really enjoyed it and started taking more of them. And it was really compelling working with adult students, and it still is to me, in part because of the intrinsic motivation that they have. I mean, they have made this active and often courageous decision to say, I'm a busy person, I'm a successful person, but I'm going to spend time on trying to learn how to play the piano. Like, this is something I want to do. And that's just so inspiring as a teacher to see that motivation and to try to help that. So I finished the master's degree, and I'm starting to piece together a studio, but that you can't find 40 students overnight to make a living. And so one of the things that came to me, and I'm not sure how it came to me, but through the group piano training that I had as part of that master's degree, I thought, well, what if SMU offered some group piano classes for adult beginners? Could that work? And so I went to the community division and kind of made a proposal, and we put that together, and they ended up being pretty successful. So, maybe it took a year or two to fully spin up, but there was a time when I was teaching 6 to 8 group adult piano classes a week of different populations, with 8 or 10 people in each class. And we would have several at the beginning level, but some of them would want to continue. So we ended up kind of making more levels. Okay, there's beginning 2 and there's beginning 3 and there's intermediate, and
building.
Yeah.
Building.
And that experience, literally working with hundreds of adult students over a few years, led to the questions that kind of fueled my research about what are the benefits of adult piano study? Why are all these really successful people choosing to spend time and energy on piano study? Because they're not making careers out of it. They're not making money from it. So what is it that is driving them?
Right. Love
So
of music, love of the instrument, desire.
Yeah. Yeah, and I mean, the research that I've done also shows that there are some deep-rooted psychological and personal benefits that they get out of it. Like, one of the most frequently cited things with all the adults I've looked at in my research is this concept or construct of a dream fulfilled. Like,
I dream to do
I've
this.
always wanted to do this. I've been
Right.
waiting my whole life to do this. For 30 years, I've wanted to try the piano or something. Or it could be even kind of a dream extended. Like, I took piano for a couple years as a kid, but quit. And I've always wanted to go back to it,
Right.
and sometimes that dream is connected with, you talk about building or community, it's often connected with a family member or some event. My great aunt gave me a piano 30 years ago and I've always wanted to learn how to play it.
Mhm.
Or, I know my grandmother played piano, but I never knew her and I always wanted to make that connection. Like, there's so many stories like that.
There really are.
Yeah.
They're incredible. Can I sort of delve into something you touched on, which
Sure.
was the rigor that you experienced at SMU in your teacher education and the experiential aspects of that?
Yeah.
And that's sort of developing the art and craft of teaching. What aspects of that do you think have influenced you as a teacher educator? And what aspects of that do you really feel were profound for you, that really helped you begin to understand who you are as a leading educator?
So, I think what you said about the experiential aspect, that has a big influence on me as a pedagogy teacher. And it actually still bothers me, after teaching collegiate class piano collegiate pedagogy for 20 years or more. It still bothers me to walk in a classroom and talk about teaching. Like, I think we really learn when we're teaching.
Right.
And I tell my students, I say, this is a little like being in the classroom and talking about how to play basketball or something, like,
Yeah, you have to play basketball.
we can talk about some ideas and we can talk about some history and we can talk about some of the materials, but there's no substitute for actually doing it. Like,
Right.
you have to get out there and do it. And, I've had this conversation countless times with new pedagogy students. They say, well, I'm not ready to start a community music school student yet. Like, I'm not ready to start teaching. And I always tell them, you have to start.
Right. That's how you learn.
That's how you learn. And we all wish we could go back to our first students and apologize for some of the rookie mistakes that we made, but there's no way to learn without actually doing it.
And the full circle of assessment and reflection. I'm sure that was also a big part of the SMU
Yes.
program, because
Yeah.
having gone to Northwestern and being influenced also by Francis Clark and the New School through Elvina Pierce and Francis Larimer, very rigorous. A big component of that was observation, you observing other teachers, you
Yep.
being observed, and then the reflection and discussion around, just like we do with piano performance, how are, self-reflection, self-analysis of the work so that you can build in improvements and learn every time.
I think one of the great things about that program, and of course we all hated it at the time when we were students because it was so much work, but
Right.
in any program like that, when you have graduate students teaching the kids and there's this constant turnover in who the teacher is, so if a child stays in the program for 8 or 10 years, they're going to have 4 or 5 different teachers, right? Sam was really meticulous about record keeping, so continuity could be maintained. So at the end of the year, we had to write pages and pages about what the student did that year and what we expected the student to do the following year, like a plan for the whole next year and goals for the next year's recital, so that another teacher could come in and read that material and the student wouldn't miss a beat. Had I not been forced to do that, I'm not sure I would have thought to do that then in my own studio with my own students.
Right.
And thinking about, we talk all the time about this vision of the accomplished learner. Like, I really learned the skills to sit down and look at a student and say, okay, this is where we should be in a year, and this is where we should be in 3 years and 5 years. and actually kind of put that down on paper and then say, okay, well, if this is where we want to be in 5 years, what do we need to do today? How do we work backwards from that?
It's like a strategic vision plan for each student.
It is.
It
yeah.
really is.
Yeah.
And then how to figure out how
Yeah.
to.
The other thing that's kind of neat is I think we learned that we wrote pages and pages of stuff, which annoyed us. But then we all got to the point where we had written enough of that we could also do it internally,
Mm-hmm.
And you can start to formulate lesson plans that you've written before, and you realize you have this base of knowledge to kind of work with. So yeah, I'm really grateful for all of that.
Be sure to listen to the full episode on our website, pianoinspires.com, on Spotify or Apple Podcasts.